Why there are so many people saying that they are autistic and have ADHD? Because it's cool online to be unique and vaguely victimized. You get to call yourself neurodivergent and tell other less diverse, neurotypical people how regular stuff they do actually constitutes microaggression towards you, a neglected minority. Pop culture cycles through the more attractive mental and neurological disorders autism, bipolar, ADHD, OCD, while leaving out the less pretty one like schizophrenia or certain personality disorders. It's a form of fetishism. I've never had so many dramatic people speak on my behalf before, it's utter cringe. Part of it is the fact that as a society we've started to acknowledge that neurodivergency is a real thing and that kids aren't just lazy or fidgety or don't pay attention. Although sure, there are plenty of kids of who that is true, and as we've refined our knowledge about them, we've gotten a lot better at detecting these problems and diagnosing them. The other part is that some people just self-diagnose with a problem to make an excuse for their behavior, whether it's autism or depression or fibromyalgia, because many people are diagnosed and some suspect they are autistic and or have ADHD. If you're wondering if autism has become more common, I would say that more people are being diagnosed with autism today than in the past, but there is no evidence that autism itself has become more common, due to changes in diagnostic criteria. There are more individuals covered by the criteria. Many people diagnosed with autism today would previously have received other diagnoses or managed without a diagnosis and support. Psychology and mental health sciences have been so stigmatized in the past that both the doctors and parents of patients were very much against a diagnosis. During the Reagan years, he pushed so heavily the concept that psychology is a tool for communism and defunded the publicly funded mental health services. It really put the entire field back in the US. Over time the stigma eroded, so people are back to actually trying to understand what is happening and making those diagnoses. Because, have ADHD. But it's about awareness. I just thought I was really lazy for some things and really good at other things. Like, I can get online masters in computer science with little to no effort, but I can't put away laundry. I just thought it was motivation until I saw my son have the exact same issues in terms of speech and learning. Then I realized I had it because he was just like me when I was his age. As far as ADHD, it's like when they called it adhd riddle in kids in the 80s. There were definitely some kids that had the disease and needed the help. But a large majority were just high-strung kids whose parents got talked into dosing their kids instead of finding ways to help them deal with their energy. There are some that think the philosophy is making a comeback. Much to the chagrin to those that actually have ADHD. They're extremely common disorders, you are always surrounded by it. People are saying it more because social media makes them feel comfortable to speak about it, where previously it was taboo. Also, a good number have only realized they have it from hearing personal stories that match their own. Especially less severe cases who got missed while in school, or folks from the categories which were previously under-recognized. I've actually been diagnosed with both autism and ADHD, and it feels like people don't understand what it's like to actually experience these things. It's almost become romanticized and quirky to have either or both. Which is ridiculous emo. And people do the same with mental health issues as well. Mixture of things emo. There are people who want attention, want to be seen as a victim, think it's cool. Then there are people who genuinely believe they are neurodivergent, but getting diagnosed is a time-consuming and can be uncomfortable. Yeah. Around high school, college I started realizing, damn, I just don't think the same. Was diagnosed ADHD as kid though, but didn't really have anything done. Always been mild enough, I mostly just kinda limp along and make it through the day. It's a trend. Just like a few years ago when suddenly people were allergic to gluten. An old friend of mine, who was a great student when younger, now claims that he no longer reads books because he's ADHD. No dude, you're just lazy. When we identified asthma, did we start asking why so many people suddenly have asthma? Or did we just now have a better understanding and a name to ascribe to what was already there? Some folks prefer self-diagnosis over seeking professional guidance. I think it's really important to get a real diagnosis from a doctor to understand these conditions better. People don't really know what being on the autism spectrum means. They read some of the quirks that could apply to anyone and are like, OMG, that is totally me. There's no accountability. People love to blame other things for their faults, so other people pat them on the back and do the same thing. Then it snowballs. Same reason left-handedness statistics went up after people stopped forcing right-handedness, aka that we just simply got better at diagnosing people. Lol. I had the same question. It's like super common on Reddit for people who think they're autistic. I just assumed they didn't know what autism was. Partly higher diagnosis rates, partly the DSMV compiler's decision to combine the autism, Asperger's, and PDD nose diagnoses, partly in memes, attention, Munchausen's, hypochondria, and scapegoating for their behavior, lack of focus in a lot of cases where there can't be a diagnosis. I mean, is it new? The guy you grew up with in every class that was an impossibly huge nerd was just autistic and undiagnosed. Many people have been vaccinated for the fake virus. 3 years later you see a rise in autism. Coincidence? I think not. Probably because of what they see on TikTok. If you at least 3 of these signs, you definitely have some parts hypochondria and some parts more awareness, so more likely to diagnose themselves as such. Google Autism Disease Australia and you'll see why diagnosis has gone through the roof here. On the other hand, there are those whom take your courtesy and higher reverence for granted, because it's a convenient excuse to evade responsibility and to be a shit human being, because it gets you a government check and you never have to work a day in your life. Is this some kind of self-diagnosis or extreme procrastination and laziness? Maybe because there are so many people that are autistic and have ADHD. Apparently, it's cool to read something online and self-diagnose yourself.